Just from looking at your oral microbiome, Viome can predict whether you have cancer.
We have now analyzed over 1 million samples. We now know more about human body than any living entities on Earth. Stop blaming your ancestors for your problems. Less than 1% of your genes come from your ancestors. Your genes have less than 10% impact on your health. 90 to 95% of everything in your health and your longevity, it is something you get to control. I have always thought you were just one of those people who believe in eating red meat. I wanted to look at the damn data and say, you know what? Is Dave Asprey actually right or is he wrong? So this is my confession.
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey.
Today, I'm interviewing one of my favorite guests of all time on the show, who's been on before. And his name is Naveen Jain. He's the founder and CEO of Viome Life Science. And the reason that I love getting regular updates for you from Naveen is that he's one of the most forward-thinking people I've ever met when it comes to health. And he's cracked the code on the microbiome. I've been working with his team for about 8 years at Viome. They've added 10,000 new bacteria, and probably more since then, to the library of what goes on inside the gut. But he's gone way beyond that, to the point where just from looking at your oral microbiome, Viome can predict whether you have cancer. Like really, really big things that the FDA fast-tracked. So you've probably heard plenty of my episodes about probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, and things like that. But there's always another level with Naveen. And we're going to talk about what AI is doing for you and your ability to see what's happening inside your gut and to take control of it. We'll talk about immune function and specifically longevity. You'll also hear about some concepts that I haven't introduced on the show before. And I'm pretty excited about it. Naveen, my dear friend and fellow leader of the Apollo Group Entrepreneur Mastermind with me, welcome back to the show.
Well, first of all, Dave, this is absolutely the one podcast I look forward to every time. And it doesn't matter how many times you and I have chatted, there is so much stuff to talk about. And I always look forward to sharing all the latest with you.
All right, let's get into it. I'm going to assume that listeners know that we have bacteria in our gut and they affect all sorts of things in your biology. If this is your first episode ever, you may not know that. You're going to have to do a little bit of catch up. So let's assume we've all heard microbiome, and maybe they've even heard about the Viome test and how it's looking at RNA versus DNA. What I want to know is, what do we specifically know about the microbiome and aging?
Aha. So first of all, let me just start with microbiome. So microbiome resides not only just in our gut, which is where most people think it is actually is in your mouth. So oral microbiome, you have a skin microbiome, you have a nasal microbiome, you have, so microbiome is all over us and inside us. There are 100 trillion of these microbes that are in symbiotic relationship with us as humans. So we as Homo sapiens or our fellow humans, 99% of all the genes that are expressed in our body don't come from mom and dad. So my first thing is stop blaming your ancestors for your problems. Less than 1% of your genes come from your ancestors, right? 99% are these microbes that you actually get to control. And I think we're going to get a little bit more into it on the longevity side. The same message. Your genes have less than 10% impact on your health, period, right? So 5 to 10% of the impact comes from your genes. 90 to 95% of everything in your health and your longevity, it is something you get to control. It is your lifestyle, right? So blame the choices you make every day. Don't blame your ancestors. So that's the first message.
Question for you there, Naveen.
Yeah.
MTHFR, COMT, these are common genetic mutations that affect your ability to absorb things. Don't those matter somewhat?
They do. And they do matter. And my point I must say, they matter 5 to 10%. And that means now once you know what they are, you're able to get the right nutrition that takes into account of that, right? So I'm not saying that no one is different. There is between you and I, you are handsome, you are tall, you are, all the good qualities a man needs to have and lots of hair. Even then, 99.9% of our genes, our DNA is identical, right? So it's only the 0.1% that's different between different humans, right? That I'm not suggesting that the genes don't matter at all, but point is their impact is so small and the nutrition and lifestyle can overcome that. That means you may have a particular propensity for a particular thing to happen, but you can control that by changing your lifestyle, right? So by eating the right nutrition, you're able to overcome your genes and actually be able to live healthy, long life, even with the mutations you may have.
Okay. Will something like a microbiome test, like the Viome test that's looking at what your microbes are doing, will that tell me if I need more methylated B vitamins?
Since you mentioned about Viome, so Viome basically does three things. It analyzes, so you basically get a kit at home and we analyze your saliva, so you spit in a tube and we analyze all of your RNA in your saliva. And when we say RNA, these are the expression of your genes. So you remember, your genes never change, but what they do and what they're expressing is always changing, right? So same DNA, the identical DNA makes your hair, your lungs, your liver, your kidney, your skin, and everything in your body comes from the identical DNA. But yet, it can produce every single part of our body, different organs, including our neurons, all from the same DNA. So it's really the expression of the DNA that causes these different organs to be produced. That means the gene expression can change what your DNA does. So DNA is like an alphabet, and RNA is the story you are writing. So we analyze the RNA. So when we look at in your saliva, we are looking at all of your oral microbial gene expression, and then we're also looking at all of your human gene expression in your saliva. Remember, so all this stuff, your human gene expression that's in your saliva, the inflammatory markers, everything that's happening, we're measuring that. Then we measure the stool, the bottom of the digestive tube. So remember, we are like a donut. There is a tube that goes through us. So we measure the top of the digestive tube, and then we measure the bottom of the digestive tube by taking a touch of your stool. And now we are measuring all of your gut microbial gene expression. So all the RNA of your stool, that gives us a gut microbial expression. And then we also get all the human gene expression that's coming from epithelial cells, which are the gut lining that are shedding in your stool. So we get all of that. Then we take the finger prick of your blood, so about 3 to 4 drops of your blood. That gives us everything else you want to know around your body. So now we are looking at your mitochondria. So that means now, Dave, your audience is the only audience I can talk about mitochondria. Otherwise, people look at me, am I an alien? What the hell am I talking about, right? But at least with you, I can have a conversation. The mitochondria is actually an organelle inside our human cell. It is believed it used to be an ancient bacteria captured inside the human cell. So they are not just mitochondria. Every single organelle has its own function and could be honestly a separate organism in the early part that actually got captured into one single cell as a symbiotic relationship. So when we are analyzing your blood, we are analyzing your mitochondria. That means all of your mitochondrial gene expression. So this is something people may not know. Your mitochondria has its own DNA. It is different from the DNA that you think of your mom and dad. This particular mitochondria comes from your mom. So just so you know, your mitochondria comes from your mom. And that's really the ancestry of your maternal side that you're seeing in your mitochondria. So we analyze your mitochondria, and then we analyze all of your inflammatory markers. So in the finger prick blood, you'll be seeing all the cytokines, which most people technical word would be all these interleukins, right? So we'll be measuring all of your interleukins, the cytokines, all of your mitochondria, and then we're looking at everything in your gut microbial expression, oral microbial expression, and then we combine everything. So by looking at all of these RNA, then we use AI to say, all right, how are they interacting with each other? What is going on? And what could be done about it? So once we realize that certain genes are underexpressed or certain genes are overexpressed, when we say what are the substrate? The substrates are these ingredients that could come from food, they could come from supplements, they could come from other types of ingredients that actually now can impact these pathways. So if you want certain genes to be overexpressed, then you actually can find a substrate that will amplify that. And if you want certain genes to be underexpressed, then you can find the ingredient that will suppress that. So you talked about methylation. Methylation is fundamentally an epigenetic, which is over genetics. And purpose of methylation is to actually reduce the expression of a certain gene. That means when certain genes are methylated, they are underexpressed or not expressed. And then that expression can be changed, and it changes as you age, and it changes based on your diet and lifestyle. And when I say lifestyle, I mean the stress and the exercise and the sleep and all that good stuff that you do every day.
So what that means is that if you do have some genetic issues, you're going to pick that up by looking at RNA, because RNA is what the DNA ultimately is making based on your environment. And for listeners, this is a big deal. I still think it's useful to know your MTHFR status, but if you're managing it actively with Viome, if you're under or over methylating, and these are major issues for longevity and cognitive performance and inflammation that affect at least half of people have some kind of a thing going on there. The upside of this is that MTHFR has become relatively famous. My friend Gary Brecka talks about this a lot, and it's been a through line even in my first fertility book. There's about 19 other major genetic differences between people that have to do with sulfur, have to do with dopamine, have to do with nitric oxide, all these different things that are around human performance and aging and your brain. So looking at what the body's actually doing allows you to look at that whole stack of those things instead of looking at your genetics and saying, oh, I have this propensity, but I don't know if it's happening or not. So should I take more of this supplement or less? That's pretty interesting. So let's go back to aging. What have you learned in the last year about aging and the microbiome that we didn't know before?
So there's so much stuff. And first thing is, so first of all, first one to share with you. First person, you know that we have now analyzed over 1 million samples.
Wow.
1 million samples. That means we now know more about human body than any living entities on earth, period, right? We know everything about human body by analyzing 1 million samples. Now, and one thing that I was just looking at the data, and this is my confession now. So I have always thought you were just one of those people who believe in eating red meat because just somehow you do. So I wanted to look at the damn data and say, you know what? Is Dave Asprey actually right or is he wrong? So this is my confession. 58% of the people actually benefit from eating red meat.
Wow.
Right. 42% of the people could potentially be harmed based on their gut microbial activity. So this is what happens. As you know, the red meat, and especially obviously you got to eat not the stuff that you get, which is farm, which is industrial produce. You want to get a grass-fed red beef, grass-fed beef. All the beef contains is choline and carnitine. And the choline in the red meat, your microbes can actually convert them into something called TMA, trimethylamine. That gets absorbed in your blood, and your liver actually can convert that TMA into something called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, which is what causes the atherosclerosis and many other diseases, right? Now, interesting thing is the expression of the enzyme in liver that converts the TMA to TMAO is called FMO3. Interestingly, that FMO3 enzyme can be accelerated or actually overproduced when you have a certain oral microbial activity. So for example, P. gingivalis, when it produces gingerpine, increases the activity of FMO3. Vitamin B. Vitamin B actually increases the production of enzyme FMO3, right? So if you're eating a lot of red meat, then you should cut down some of that vitamin, and you should make sure that your gut microbes are not producing a lot of TMA and that you can analyze. So when you do a Viome test, we can show you what is your TMA production and how it's going to impact your heart health, right? And that's basically, as most people who have listened to me before now know, that there is no such thing as universal healthy food. A food can be good for you today, and it may actually become bad in a year as your body changes. Or if it works for your spouse, or if it worked for your neighbor, doesn't mean it's going to work for you, right? So really interesting stats. Spinach and kale, your two favorite foods, right, are actually, interestingly, almost half the people are harmed by these things because the oxalates in them is very difficult to digest. But the same thing is true for cashews and almonds, right?
Yes. Or raspberries.
Avocado.
Yeah.
Avocado, I thought, was a superfood for everyone. It turns out that it has very high uric acid. And the people who already have high uric acid, and if you're eating a lot of avocado, is going to turn into a gout or heart disease. Right? And that's the fundamental thing, is to know that there is no such thing as universal healthy food. You have to know what is going to work for you. The pomegranate is another one that I just wanted to say, because Vogue just published a thing, the it fall food is pomegranate. And what I was going to tell you is that pomegranate in itself actually doesn't really have any nutrition. However, pomegranate has something called allergic acid. The allergic acid, in some people, when they have the right microbial activities, they can convert them into something called urolithin A, ULA. Urolithin A gets absorbed in your body, and urolithin A is an unbelievably great substrate for your mitochondria, right? But simply eating pomegranate or drinking a pomegranate juice doesn't mean you're going to benefit from it. And that's the reason we are actually now learning, it's not just about the probiotics. In fact, the postbiotics actually turning out to be a better solution than taking the probiotics, because even the things like Akkermansia, which a lot of the people are now falling for because some people are advertising as GLP-1. The problem with that approach is Akkermansia can actually cause MS. So if you don't believe me, just go Google Akkermansia and MS, and you'll see that Akkermansia can also cause MS. The trick really is to understand, but postbiotic Akkermansia is actually really, really good. There was a study that recently came out that how Akkermansia postbiotic actually is better and in terms of impact and efficacy than the live Akkermansia.
Now, I want to make sure for listeners, I've done, I think, 3 or 4 episodes on Akkermansia as a way of controlling blood sugar.
Absolutely.
And what I believe and what I've seen from the majority of evidence is that if you have a healthy lining of your gut, Akkermansia is beneficial. If you have a leaky gut, Akkermansia might not be beneficial. And since it's probably going to be there anyway, and since it helps with metabolism, I actually do take Akkermansia, but I don't have leaky gut because I do all the other stuff.
But you should try the postbiotic Akkermansia. It's really, really good.
Is that something that you guys are making?
We have the company in Europe that makes it, and we just actually we adding them to all of our products.
Okay, very, very interesting. And guys, postbiotics, if that's a new term for you, a postbiotic, it is part of the system of probiotics. You have something called prebiotic. This is what are the gut bacteria going to eat? And your food, some of it's prebiotic, some's not. And then you have the probiotic, which is the bacteria that does the eating. And you have the postbiotic, which is the metabolic compounds made by gut bacteria. And they can be beneficial postbiotics, like the one we just talked about, or like urolithin A. And urolithin A is one of my superstar longevity ingredients. The scientists from Timeline have been on over and over talking about this. But you can also have toxins like lipopolysaccharides and MMPs and other things that are really bad for you made by the gut bacteria. And you're always going to have some mix of good postbiotics and bad postbiotics made. And when you get the data, which is what Viome's all about, you end up saying, oh, what bad things am I making? How could I change my diet so that my gut bacteria make less of the bad and more of the good? And even TMAO, which we talked about, this is about every 5 years, the New York Times or some other article will come out, usually funded by Kellogg's or someone, I believe. And they'll say, red meat, bad TMAO. And here's the thing. If you have gut bacteria that make TMAO, eggs, fish, and red meat will all turn into TMAO.
That is absolutely correct.
Right. So that means you might, for a month or maybe 3, do what Viome says, don't eat any of that stuff. It'll be a miserable 3 months because you'll be malnourished because you don't get all that healthy red beef cooked rare and juicy. Naveen's going, gross. He's a vegetarian. We always tease each other at dinner. But during that time, the bacteria would go away, and then you can resume eating it. And so I think that if the 58-42 is based on TMAO, that means 42% of people have the bad bacteria. But once they get rid of it, the amount of people who benefit from some amount of red meat may be higher than that. But if everyone had TMAO, I'd say skip meat for a little while. Oh, and skip eggs and go on some sort of fasting, weird macrobiotic thing, but only until your gut bacteria are fixed. How long does it take to change your gut bacteria based on your diet?
Very interesting. So that's with another study we just did. And it turns out it is 6 months. So in 6 months, your gut bacteria changes enough that you actually have. So it changes, obviously, it takes down anywhere between 3 to 6 months. But what we saw, the p-value was very, very low at 6 months. That means there is a significant amount of change in 6 months. Right. But after 3 months or so, you start to see a real impact on it. But after 6 months, actually, it is very different from what it was.
Got it. So it can take up to 6 months. And I've seen studies that say 3 days of changing what you eat. If you eat 0 fermentable foods, I mean, you'll know your gut bacteria changed because you stop farting. I mean, so you can make rapid change.
That's actually the gut microbial expression.
Okay.
So what happens is your expression of these microbes changes faster than the microbes themselves, right? So in fact, the gut bacteria, it's very hard to kill someone because their tendency is to live. They want to do everything they can possibly do to live. Right? To get rid of them is going to take a time. You have to starve them for a long enough time before they give up because they try to survive on anything they can get around themselves, right? So, I mean, Akkermansia is really, the full name of Akkermansia is actually Akkermansia mucin. And mucin is a lover of mucin. It actually lives inside the gut lining, the mucin. The mucin is where the Akkermansia lives. When you go on a long fasting, and you don't feed your bacteria, what do you think they're going to do? It actually eats your mucin. It actually starts eating the mucin itself, and that causes the leaky gut. So what I was trying to say about the postbiotic, as you define, is very interesting, is that what they do is you take a live bacteria, you feed them the stuff that they need, and it starts to produce things like Akkermansia will produce something called butyrate. And then you heat kill the bacteria, and that becomes the everything together, that becomes your postbiotic. So it has all the goodness of the metabolite that you wanted, and it also has the cells that the bacteria has. So it has all the sensing mechanism that your immune system will sense that it is there. And it turns out that, the postbiotic of Akkermansia, it is higher efficacy and lower risk of developing a disease than the live probiotic. So I think, and again, GLP-1, now everyone knows about GLP-1, the Ozempic and Mounjaro. What's really interesting is your body can actually do the same thing that Ozempic does if you eat the right set of foods. Your body itself will produce the GLP-1. Right. So this really interesting is having the right prebiotic, postbiotic, and having the good set of organism microbial activity. You can actually, if you can have the right set of foods and supplements, you can in fact start to produce the GLP-1 and start to lose weight naturally. Right.
In fact, this new class of probiotic related thing, some people call it parabiotic. And this is dead bacteria. And the first paper that made me interested in this, I read about almost 20 years ago. And I was looking at, well, what's the best way to filter water to make sure that you're not getting parasites from your water. There's a lot of tap water, even in the US, has parasites. And when you're overseas, it's very, very common. There's a group who used ultraviolet light to kill everything in the water, and then people would drink the water. And those people had much healthier immune systems than people who drank water that had been filtered to remove all the things. So the presence of dead bugs helps your immune system in a way that we're really just discovering. And what you're doing with Viome is you're adding heat-killed Akkermansia to get the metabolic benefits.
Yes.
That's actually a really interesting avenue for longevity that a lot of people haven't looked into. In my own practice, I take specific prebiotics that feed the good guys. I take a bunch of different postbiotics. And of course, I'm a fan of Viome because, well, I've been an advisor and investor, and we've worked together on it for a long time. So I didn't realize that you'd added the Akkermansia stuff.
Another thing is phages. And I think you and I, very early days of Viome, we talked about phages. So think about it. When we are analyzing all the RNA, we're looking at everything. We're not just looking at bacteria, because most people think, oh, the gut microbiome is all about bacteria. No. We look at all the bacteria, we look at all the viruses, and by the way, the viruses can be the viruses or the phages. So there are two types of viruses. The viruses that can actually interact with the human body, and then there's something called phages. These phages are viruses that only infect the bacteria. Right. Interestingly, that changes what these bacteria do. So you may have the certain organisms, but you may have the phages that are infecting these bacteria. So you may have a certain organism, but it's going to perform completely differently because now infected by phages, right? So we look at all your phages, we look at all of your fungi. So we're looking at all the fungus, we're looking at all the yeast, we're looking at every single organism in your gut, every single organism in your saliva, and then we're looking at everything, all the RNA in your human body. And that's where we start. And then based on all the data, so now we have collected in each person, when they do that Viome full body intelligence test, we now getting close to 30 million biomarkers from every single person. So you're not like you're doing a blood test and you do a Quest blood test and you get 50 things or 100 things or 400 things, right? Now we're getting 30 million biomarkers from every person. And then we analyze all of these RNA, use the AI, look at everything you have, and now based on all this stuff, we are able to say, hey, this is your biological age, this is your cognitive health, this is your heart health, this is your gut health, this is your oral health. And then you can go as geeky as you want to be, as nerd as you want to be, and we tell you, hey, this is your LPS production, this is your uramic toxin production, this is your sulfide production, this is your uric acid production, and we go through every single thing that you want to know. And then we actually say for each one of these scores, and today the new app is coming out in January. You're gonna love this. Every score now, we say when this score is low, these are the 5 diseases that you are actually increasing the risk of developing if you have high LPS, or if you have high sulfide, or if you have low butyrate. This is what's going to happen to you. Now, here are the ingredients just for you in the dosages you need to actually improve these scores, right? So we are able to now say, hey, don't eat kale, and here is the reason why. Or don't eat avocado because you have high uric acid. But you can eat red meat if you want because your TMA is very low and your FMO3 is not being overexpressed, and you can actually eat red meat if you want. It's very nutritious and good for you, right? So we go through all the foods, tell you which foods to eat and why, what foods not to eat and why. And every food, now we can tell you what it's going to do. This food has these substrate or ingredients. Each of these ingredients, this is the score it is going to impact, and this is going to be good, and this is going to be bad, right? So we literally go through every single food, tell you what foods to eat and why, what foods not to eat and why, and then we go through every ingredients in your supplement. We go through vitamins, minerals, herbs, digestive enzymes, amino acids, and then we tell you need 22 milligram of lycopene, 79 milligram of amylase, you need 72 milligram of berberine, and we literally give you every vitamin, mineral, herbs, and we custom make those supplements for each individual on demand every month. There is no pre-made stuff. We have a compounding pharmacy that makes it for every individual every single month. Right? And then we have the personalized probiotics and prebiotics for your gut. And I think, I'm not sure, Dave, you saw these oral lozenges, these are now made for you. Right? And this is another one that I think you may or may not have seen. These are our personalized toothpaste. So this is for morning, and this is for evening. It has all of the postbiotics enzymes that you need to adjust your oral microbiome. And the morning one removes the plaque on contact and removes the gum inflammation. Right? That is, so basically now you adjust your oral microbial activity, you adjust your gut microbial activity, and then we give you all the supplements to reduce the inflammation in your body and increase the mitochondria.
Wow.
Right.
If you look at risks of Alzheimer's and heart disease and your oral microbiome, we've known about this for a long time. And interestingly, my last Viome test, it showed that my oral microbiome had some of the things associated with cavities, which is crazy. I mean, I take vitamin D. I have very hard bones. This doesn't make any sense. But I have a crown from 18 years ago that was loose. So it came off and I went into the dentist and they said, oh, look, you have 3 really shallow cavities underneath it. And they didn't show in x-rays, right? So like, oh, okay, you actually detected something that no dentist could see just by looking at the Viome test on my saliva. So they went to drill them out. And even though they were just on the surface, it took 3 diamond bits just to get them out because my bone density is super high. And that's why I didn't get big cavities from it. So knowing what's going on in there is a big deal. And I am a huge fan of, when I go to bed, take one of the Viome lozenges and I'll put it in, and then I put in a bite guard, because if you grind your teeth down as you age, it will affect your posture. It'll affect so many things that you would not believe in your nervous system. So you got to not be grinding your teeth at night. And then I tape my mouth closed with the good bacteria in there so it stays moist and I don't get dry teeth, which makes them turn yellow. When you wake up, you don't have morning breath. And you have really healthy bacteria, not just in your mouth, but that go throughout your entire GI system. So for me, this is a fundamental part of aging. The other thing is even, 1 or 2 millimeter pockets, you don't want those. So really good oral care is a relatively cheap and high impact longevity thing that you want to do. It's don't let your teeth get ground down over time, put a bite guard in when you're asleep, tape your mouth so you get nitric oxide, and have the probiotics, the Viome oral probiotics that are in your mouth that are good for your teeth, because that seeds the rest of your gut. So
I think one of the more important thing, I think more than the teeth, the gum. It is, remember,
it's the gum.
Our tube that goes through us, it is supposed to be really tight. Everything that's inside is supposed to stay inside and everything outside is supposed to stay outside. And that's the reason 70% of our immune system is along our gut lining. When you have inflammation in your gums, now you have leaky gums, just like your leaky gut. And now the oral microbes are able to get into the blood, and now you have a chronic inflammation. And that's the fundamental problem, is that anytime people think, oh, why do I care if I lose teeth, I can get the implant? It's not that. The big thing is, once you have inflammation in your gums, you're going to have that inflammation in your whole body. And we have now seen that when you have this, so by the way, 84% of the people have P. gingivalis in their mouth. Only 16% of them will ever develop a periodontitis or any of the gum disease. Only when the P. gingivalis starts to express ginger pain, that's where it becomes pathogenic. So P. gingivalis doesn't become pathogenic unless it starts to produce ginger pain. And that's what causes the massive amount of inflammation in your gum. And as you mentioned, when you have a poor oral health, it is directly connected to diabetes, it's connected to heart disease, it's connected to your sexual health, because the nitric oxide is produced in your oral cavity. And by the way, it is now connected to many types of cancer, including oral cancer, throat cancer, and colorectal cancer. And you're swallowing 1.5 liters of saliva every single day. That means what's happening in your mouth is also going in your gut. And what happens in the gut is not your vagus. What happens in your gut goes into whole body. It's not what happens in the gut, it stays in the gut, right? It is actually connected through vagus nerve. It impacts your brain. So we have now shown that your gut microbial activities can directly relate to your mental health. So whether it is a depression, whether it is anxiety, in fact, addiction, and many of the things are actually connected to your gut microbial activity. And things like Alzheimer are now shown they can come from your oral microbiome and also from gut microbiome, infecting your blood-brain barrier, making it permeable, and now you have infection in the brain, and your glial cells are actually not releasing the amyloid beta to protect from the inflammation, and overproduction of that causes the whole bunch of neurodegenerative diseases.
The old way of handling this would, well, just use Listerine and kill everything, which
Oh my God.
we know it's really bad for you because it destroys all the nitric oxide. But let me ask you this. If I did sterilize my mouth, say with hydrogen peroxide or something, so there's nothing, and then I add the Viome lozenge back in, that's going to make sure that there's pretty much nothing bad in there and only good stuff.
No.
No?
Unfortunately, our mouth is constantly exposed to the environment, right? So it's not what you put in, it's also everything. That every time you're speaking, you're breathing a whole bunch of microbes from your environment, right? So it's constantly being exposed to everything, right?
I mean, before bed, just right before bed, you could kind of sterilize your mouth.
And then take oral lozenges. But the
Yeah.
point is, you do want the diversity. So the thing
Okay.
is, you never ever want just to have only 6 or 7 types of organisms that are in any probiotics. The diversity of these microbes matter because they perform so many different functions. And the worst thing is, they all rely on each other for feeding each other. So they produce something that other bacteria use, and they actually all have to cooperate together to live together, right? So to me, the colony, it matters. And that means taking Listerine is one of the worst things you can do for your oral health. Right? Because it's like taking antibiotics, right? It literally kills everything. And to some extent, once you have a poor microbiome, you'll start to get lots of the diseases. In fact, if there was no microbiome in your body, you couldn't live. I mean, most of the mice that actually are what they call germ-free mice, when they kill all of their microbiome, they actually are very weak and they don't live long.
Here's an upgrade for you for stress and energy. It's the Lila Quantum Tech. Their products use quantum energy to boost your energy, lower stress, and give you control over your body. Stress is a major part of aging, so when you manage your stress, you can live longer. Multiple studies show that Lila Quantum's products neutralize the effect of harmful EMFs on your body, improve blood circulation, and enhance your heart rate variability. They've even shown a 20 to 29% increase in ATP production, and that's your body's energy source. It's backed by over 15 placebo-controlled studies. The technology works. Ready to feel better and upgrade your performance? Go to leelaq.com/Dave and get a special 10% discount. Armra colostrum is a must-have. This isn't just another supplement. It is colostrum, which is upgraded to boost your immune system and your gut health. Armra is great because it comes from first milking colostrum, which means it has more than 200 functional nutrients. That includes immunoglobulins, growth factors, and peptides that specifically protect your gut lining. You can expect cellular defense and energy on a new level. Since I've added Armra to my stack, I've definitely seen faster recovery, especially during travel, better immune resilience, and more mental clarity. Clinical studies show that colostrum reduces gut inflammation and supports muscle mass. And it turns out I have both of those. But my gut inflammation is far better than it used to be. This is nature's original superfood. It's potent, it's clean, and I think you want to try it. Head to tryarmra.com and use code DAVE. They'll give you 15% off.
All the research I've seen on germ-free mice says that they don't get fat no matter what you feed them, and they're super ripped, and they do live a long time until they're exposed to one bacteria, then they get weak and die. Right?
What happens is the germ-free bacteria are not able to eat anything because every time you eat a food, there is something in there.
Yeah, so they have to sterilize everything. And these are weird lab things. And it's funny that there probably is a point where if you could have a human that was always germ-free entirely, which is impossible, you'd probably have a weird, long-lived, healthy person who couldn't do anything.
But in the bubble, basically you'll be living in a bubble and you can never get out of the bubble, so you may as well be in a cocoon somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's not the lifestyle that I want, but it's interesting to see how important having we'll call it the symphony of bacteria is, because it's not feasible to be in a germ-free environment.
That's correct.
I wanted to go back to Akkermansia for a minute
Yeah.
and share a personal experience. And this is why I don't recommend the keto diet for long periods of time, or frankly, even a carnivore diet for long periods of time. When I was testing out the edges of the Bulletproof diet before I wrote the book, and this is a book with almost 1 million copies sold globally, it changed the way we think about some of our health. I went on a zero carb, only meat diet for somewhere around 6 months. And the first couple months, man, I felt really good. I'm really good, better than normal, because I dropped inflammation from probably bad bacteria and some plant toxins. Problem was, then I started getting disrupted
Brain fog.
sleep, brain fog, all the things. And I had high levels of lipopolysaccharides and I had leaky gut, because the Akkermansia ate all the gut lining back or mucus that was possible and then started eating the lining of the gut. This is why in the Bulletproof diet, like, use keto as a scalpel and do it for a week and then eat some carbs. Do it for a week, eat some carbs, because your gut bacteria will poke holes in your gut lining if you don't feed them on occasion. What are the implications for long fasting from this as well?
I mean, honestly, I think taking a low caloric diet, there's a lot of decent research on that. And what we are seeing is that in these long fasting, including intermittent fasting, I think I've sent you a bunch of research. I mean, the research does not look really, really good. In fact, the large
for
research,
the gut microbiome specifically?
both gut microbiome and overall longevity. So the one large research that was done about 100,000 people, it shows people, and that was it was one of the research that was post. So that means they looked at the people who were on on the diet like keto diet, intermittent fasting, and they saw the people who followed the intermittent fasting actually died sooner with heart disease.
I looked at that study, Naveen, and
That was one. And but the next
Great.
study I was going to tell you about that came out
Okay.
recently, that intermittent fasting did help with the losing weight. And that was probably for people who actually ate less amount of calories. But it turns out for longevity or anything else, there was absolutely no benefit that they saw.
You have to look at the first big study. Their definition of intermittent fasting wasn't what anyone does in longevity. They're basically people who skipped meals. There was
Yep.
there's a lot of limitations in that data.
That is on the
And-
first one, yes. The second
Yeah.
one was actually intermittent fasting data.
Yeah, the second one is different. The first one,
Yeah.
I wouldn't use that one as a good data source.
That's why I say it was
yeah.
not a good data. However, what I was trying to say was that it's not a good thing, but at least what I'm saying is the long fasting has never been good, because at the end of the day, when you don't eat, your bacteria are going to eat something. And if you're fighting the evolution always wins. Evolution 1, everyone 0.
There is though, I mean, even in Ayurveda, there's a long history of doing occasional fasts. And
Absolutely.
I think about a
absolutely.
5-day fast once every 6 months or something, that there's pretty good shifts in it. And your gut bacteria in 5 days is not going to eat you. But 40 days, I've also interviewed experts who've done this for years for cancer and all. Sometimes a big reset like that. But then if you get leaky gut, there's nothing in your gut to leak, at least. But then they have to rebuild the gut lining. And that's something I wouldn't really
But
want to do.
generally in India and Ayurveda, they normally do 1 day fasting every week, but they don't do like 5 days fastings are rare. I mean, maybe once a year or so.
Right.
But generally it's a 2 to 3 days of 1 year fasting. But generally it's more like 1 day type of fasting.
Okay.
So my feeling that it really is that I think low calorie, if I were to generalize something, would be probably a low caloric diet. That means just eat less every day. And that's probably the best advice
Yeah.
I can give.
This is a really tough thing, especially with women. I've seen so many women. In fact, this happened to me too. When I was 300 pounds and I was trying to lose weight, I'm working out 6 days a week, 90 minutes a day. I'm on a low calorie diet and I cannot lose weight, because eating less calories than your body needs creates stress. It raises cortisol. It causes all kinds of havoc. So it feels like an adequate calorie diet for long periods of time is
I
gonna be
mean,
better.
you're right. But point is, you actually do adjust a bit. So when you eat a lot of large meal, you actually crave a lot more meal. When you start to slowly cut down just a small portion, you don't feel as hungry, number one. And number two, remember, I'm just talking about generalization. Overall,
Yeah.
what I found is you can eat as much as you need, honestly, and not gain weight if you're eating the right food. And and coming back to, again, not talking just about Viome, understanding what foods are going to cause inflammation in your body. At the end of the day, the obesity or inability to lose weight or diabetes or many of these chronic diseases are probably related to chronic inflammation. So really understanding what is the root cause of what's causing the inflammation in your body and eating the right set of foods, you never have to be hungry. I'm never hungry. I eat as much as I need. I just don't eat the foods that cause me inflammation, period.
That is such a gift. Once I figured out my kryptonite foods, I can eat as much as I want, and I do not gain weight. I mean, as much as I want. Even when I first did the bulletproof diet, I did 4,500 calories a day, and I cut exercise and cut sleep just to show I'll gain a little weight, but much less than the math of calories would dictate. I actually lost weight on that. I don't think it's good for you. In fact, I know it's bad for you to do that, but I have not paid attention to counting calories, and hunger is an afterthought in my life. It's crazy. And to be as lean as I am, around 4.8% on the last time I measured it, and to never be hungry, it feels impossible, but it comes from figuring out the right foods.
Yes.
And even when you say low calorie diet, like if I was eating Fruity Pebbles, no matter how many calories, I'm probably going to get fat. And
Agreed.
yeah.
What I was simply saying was that people who want to go intermittent fasting for losing weight is probably, I'm saying you're better off just not.
Oh man, I've seen so many people set free, but even then during the intermittent fasting that I've been recommending, you're taking polyphenols, which are prebiotics. This is coffee or tea. And you might even be taking things that increase your body's ability to burn fat, like ketones or MCT oil.
I want to go back on a keto diet. I mean, I think a lot of the listeners, they simply do not listen to what you say.
No, they don't.
People just think, oh my God, Dave talks about keto diet. I'm going to go on a keto diet for the next 2 years. And I've had people who just completely destroyed their hormones. They completely destroyed their brain and energy because you never said them to go there for 2 years. I mean, people just somehow don't listen.
Yeah. That's why I wrote the whole book. If you want to go on the keto diet, read the Atkins Diet Revolution that was printed in 1972. And I did that in the 80s or 90s or something. I lost 50 of my 100 pounds, and it took me another 10 years to lose the second 50 pounds because you have to understand ketosis is it's like a scalpel, and use it for brief periods of time. You go in and out, and then it's really beautiful for losing weight, increasing cognitive function. But the endless ketosis, I don't think is great. And even when I'm on a keto diet, for people who have read more than one of my books, in Superhuman, I go into gut bacteria thanks to data from Viome, and actually published my Viome data in that book. And I quadrupled the number of species of bacteria in my gut by taking prebiotics while doing ketosis. You can do that too. But if you're just eating meat and salt, do it for 2 weeks and see how good you feel. Now you know what plant toxins are doing to you. And then you've got to get some stuff in to feed your gut bacteria. And then you find out what stuff is going to work for you. You can do it the old way. You can do it the Viome way. But I do have a question for you, Naveen. Now, I have noticed, and just anecdotally and also from studies, huge numbers of people have a buildup of oxalate throughout their body. It's in their knees, it's in their muscles, it's in the myelin, it's in the brain, these white matter lesions in the brain. So if you have that and it's present, adding oxalate to the system seems like a bad idea. So
True.
When you're saying 60-something% of people, spinach is a superfood, why do they need more oxalate?
Oh, no. I said more than actually half the people are harmed. They actually are harmed by spinach and kale. So almost half the people should not be eating things like spinach and kale and almonds, things like that, because they're very high in oxalates. And they actually, I was surprised to see that almost half the population is actually, it's not good for them. And everyone somehow think that it's magical to be eating the salad every day.
Got it. And so people in the chat here from the Upgrade Collective, they're saying, but Viome told me to eat kale. So what drives a recommendation for kale
So
or spinach?
basically, if they have the bacterial activities that are able to actually metabolize the oxalates really well, that means you can eat the oxalate food, and your microbiome can actually metabolize the oxalates so they don't get absorbed in the body.
Got it. Um, I've also looked at that, and oxalates are a big area of interest. Oxalobacter doesn't have huge activity in the human stomach, so I just tell people, look, get
But
less
we
than
do actually look at the activity of
yeah.
Oxalobacter and along with other oxalates eating bacteria. And if they are active, very highly active, then we think, you're okay to eat oxalates because you are able to actually metabolize them.
What would make that a superfood, though?
The superfood will be because it does have a lot of nutrition. So if the nutrition that you need, I mean, let's not, it's a green leaves have a lot of nutrition. However, there are lots of harmful stuff in them. And if you are able, your gut bacteria are able to remove the oxalates, then there is a decent amount of nutrition like iron. I mean, there is nothing wrong with that.
I find that spinach, even in one serving of spinach, unless maybe if it's served the way it would be served if you were eating it at an Indian restaurant where it's soaked in cheese where the calcium sticks to it, that the risks of high oxalate foods don't outweigh the benefits when they're at the very high end there, even if you have the ability to handle it, just because most people are getting 5 times what their body can metabolize.
But so we do tell you that even in the food, how much to eat. We tell you how many servings you should eat per week.
Got it. And I appreciate that. I would just caution people, even if Viome says to eat spinach, if you eat spinach and wake up the next morning, your low back hurts and your knees hurt and your skin looks like crap, I'm telling you, it was the spinach, even if the microbiome lied. Like
Fine.
right?
You can be the scientist for a while.
It's, I mean, you guys have enormous amounts of data. I always look at, well, what is outside of the Viome lens? Because it's such a big lens. And it's sort of like if a person needs the fat that's in tallow and the benefit of the fat is greater than the risk of TMAO, like how do we know? And bottom line is people have to eat what makes them feel good, but you can measure if your gut bacteria changes the way you want it. You just do a test every 3 or 6 months. So it becomes tunable, which is, to me, it's very fascinating and it's the coolest stuff. You've driven some very interesting conversations around the holobiont. And this is new in the world of biohacking for most people. What is the holobiont?
Well, again, so think about we as humans, the Homo sapiens, are essentially our super organism. We are not like somehow one organism that we think of ourselves. We are a collection of organisms that live in and on us, right? So that's what basically the holobiont is, treating the body as one single organisms rather than actually, and knowing that there are hundreds, trillions of those that are working in symbiosis with us. And when there is a dysbiosis of these interactions, that's where the disease happens, right? So this ease is because when the body is no longer at ease, which is homeostasis, is when you have a dysbiosis that becomes the dis-ease, the disease.
Right. Okay.
That,
So,
and by the way, coming back to the biological age, did I tell you that my biological age, now that I'm chronologically turned 65, my biological age is 33 now?
Are you kidding? It doesn't surprise me, given all the stuff you do and just given your energy levels. Which measure did you use to get a biological age?
I did about 8 of them, to be truthful here. So first thing, the Viomes. At Viome, we give you the biological age. And I always thought maybe my guys are just trying to be nice to me to show me that I'm really good. And they're always going to give me a low biological age to make me feel good. So I went and bought a whole bunch of other tests. And I did all of them. The True Diagnostics, the Novos, and the Glycan age, and the Elysium, and every one of them out there, right? The Chronos and all that stuff. And the Glycan age, to me, honestly, is one of the better ones. They're because they're measuring the inflammation in your body. And my Glycan age is actually 33.
Wow. And so glycan age is measuring the effect of higher amounts of blood sugar on glycation in the body. It's one of the many ways of measuring longevity. Yeah. And because I've written a major book on longevity, I speak a lot of the conferences. I also run a lot of the different tests. And one of my favorite tests is this.
Oh, of course.
the grip strength test. And it's interesting to me that True Diagnostics, which is one of the other DNA methylation
Yep.
tests, it'll actually predict your grip strength and how fast you walk based on your DNA methylation. And I find it's 90% accurate. It's kind of scary that they can do that. But if you get several of these tests, get the Viome age, get glycan age, get True Diagnostic if you're really into longevity. And you can also, if you want to save some money, get a $50 digital grip strength meter. And that's a surprisingly good indicator. So you don't have to break the bank on tests. In terms of cost effectiveness, a Viome test is quite affordable, and it gives you a longevity answer along with all this other data we
Remember,
just
it's
talked about.
freebie. I mean, our biological age test, we don't charge you for it. It's basically just included in everything else. You're going to get all the things anyway, and you also get the biological age test. But one thing that, Dave, you and I have talked about it, when you're going to do these 3 or 4 biological age tests,
Yep.
don't get spooked when people tell you that your biological age is completely different. That means one may tell you you're 40, one may tell you you're 50, one may tell you you're 60, because they're all measuring different things. So don't somehow
Right.
think, oh my God, the lowest one is the best one, everyone else just sucks, right? This is because they're all measuring different things. And your job is to really understand everything that's happening in your body, what is good and what is bad. So when someone tells you your biological age is high, understand what is it they're measuring and then try to improve on it, right? Because you are one of the people who will never say, oh my God, this test sucks because it gave me higher age, right? Because you're measuring different things.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you look at a painting with different lenses and different cameras, you're going to see different things. And so I'm not a fan of throwing one test under the bus. If I was going to say what's the one I trust the least, not that it isn't valuable, it would be a blood test for telomeres. Because blood telomeres change all the time, and I've seen 20-year swings in 1 week. It's just not that reliable, but
And
it's still
actually
better than
worse.
nothing.
Worst thing is that research that clearly shows increasing telomere does not increase your longevity, period. So somebody who thinks that somehow they can increase their telomeres, they're going to live long, there is zero research to prove that.
Yep, I agree with you there. All right, back to the Holobiont. You look at humans as being intimately tied to the world around you. So humans, plants, and animals, our microbiome is a single interconnected unit, and that's actually driving evolution. And one of the most fascinating studies in my all of my reading was a group of scientists took bacteria that had no genes present to digest a simple sugar called lactose, the stuff that's in milk. So these bacteria should have starved to death. They put them in sterile water, added lactate, added bacteria that cannot eat lactate. And magically, the bacteria somehow changed to be able to eat lactate. And they're saying this wasn't driven by genes because we looked at all the genes and there is no lactate gene in there. What the heck is going on? And this is some kind of
Environment.
powerful epigenetic stuff driven by the environment. And then we look at Paul Stamets, who's a friend who's been on the show, the kind of king of the fungus kingdom.
Yep.
And he's shown very much that when you have fungus there, fungus directs insects with the compounds that it makes, right? And then those insects are driven to certain plants to make them stronger or weaker. And we don't understand much about how all that stuff works. But what that means is you have to look at your bacteria, like you were saying, for what you're breathing, what you're touching, what you're eating, all around you. And it's incredibly complex. But at least now we have more data than before. And I think we're going to get more and more. And what I want to ask you is, okay, this looks like an AI problem to me.
It is. And that's exactly what I was saying, was that actually the research clearly shows where you live. So if you're living in a farm, you actually are absorbing all the bacteria that's coming from the farm. So cow dung, the horse shit, everything is now, as you're breathing, you're actually enriching your bacteria. So when you go on a hike in the nature, you're enriching your bacteria. All these things have a tremendous impact on your diversity of your microbiome in your mouth and on your skin and in your gut. In addition to that, your lifestyle actually changes your microbial activities as well. So for example, and I think we talked about that there are 5 things you need to live longer. So in terms of longevity, There are 5 basic things that you need to do. Just like the Maslow's hierarchy of pyramid, you have to take care of the lowest one first before you can go to the next step. So the lowest one in the hierarchy of pyramid is nutrition. Unless you get the right nutrition in the body, nothing matters. I think we talked a lot about nutrition. That means do the test what is right for you. And the thing that you should avoid are the things that are tests that give you the static information. So if you're, and again, I may be controversial here, but don't eat for your blood type. Don't eat for your DNA. Remember, your DNA or your blood type does not change when you gain 200 pounds. It doesn't change when you have diabetic. It doesn't change when you have heart disease. It doesn't change when you have depression or anxiety. None of these things change your blood type or DNA, yet you have to change your lifestyle. So the main thing is to understand what foods are good for you, what supplements you need, and you take care of that. Understand exactly what's happening in your body. Do the Viome test, get the right foods, get the right supplements, get the right probiotics, adjust your oral microbiome, gut microbiome, and your mitochondria and your inflammation in your body. That's the number one thing you have to do. Once you have done that, the next thing is stress. When you get stress, your body goes into fight or flight response. Remember how we evolved. When we were being chased by the tiger, that stress is what kept your ancestors alive. If there was no stress, you won't be here today because your ancestors would be a lunch for someone else, right? When your body goes into fight or flight response, it shuts down what it considers non-essential things. What's non-essential when you're being chased by a tiger? Digesting your own food. You're going to be lunch for someone else. Don't worry about digesting your own food right now, right? And the 2 things happen. You got eaten by a tiger, your stress went away, or you survived and your stress went away. And that was really good.
Right.
It shuts down your immune system. You don't need to worry about your immune system. And that's the reason when people are stressed, they get sick more often because the immune system is no longer functioning. So anytime when you have a stress, you're in a fight or flight response, and many of the things that your body relies on to be healthy can no longer do that. So you need to understand how to get out of the stress. And if it is the work that causing you stress, switch your work. If it is your spouse causing you stress, find a way to get rid of that stress, right?
Wow, you dodged a bullet there, Naveen. I thought you were going to say find a way to get rid of. Yeah. In other words, work on your relationship. There are skills for that are the same as business skills. It's actually not that hard if you have the right experts guiding you, because
and a right partner who's willing to work with you.
Yeah, if you're not both willing to evolve and make it work for both of you, then you end it, and that's better. But it's better off to just do the work. So I spent a lot of time on that lately.
So again, when you are stressed, you are always in the sympathetic mode. And you need to bring yourself into parasympathetic mode. And, we do that when before eating, we will do prayer, we do gratitude. And it's basically simply to move your body from sympathetic mode to parasympathetic mode, right? And that's the thing you have to do. If you need meditation, do meditation. If you need to do whatever it is to reduce the stress, breathing, slow breathing, all the good stuff that you need to do, stress is number 2. Once you have done that, the number 3 is exercise. And this is a myth that everyone should be spending several hours a day working out. Bullshit.
Don't tell Peter Attia that.
Yeah, that is a complete myth. In fact, what your body needs is 2 things. Movement. Make sure you're able to move every as often as you can, and I would say couple of miles. If you can go uphill, that's really good. 40 minutes of fast walking is very good. And as you age, make sure you get 2 or 3 times of good muscle toning. And you can use your body weight. You don't need to do a lot of weights. If you can have access to the bulletproof lab or upgrade lab, go to the upgrade lab. One of the best things you can do for your time. In 15 minutes, you'll get the same exercise that will require 1 hour or 2 hours in the gym. So go to upgrade labs. And my main thing is, if you are traveling and you don't have access to upgrade lab, I would say go do the push-ups, go do the squats, go do the lunges, just basic stuff.
It's not that hard metabolically. It's literally push-ups, squats, pull-ups, and then pulling something towards you. If you do those 4 big muscle groups, you'll have metabolism
And
working.
honestly, I'm a big fan of upgrade labs. It really cuts down the amount of things you get in terms of exercise and muscle training and everything in a very short period of time. So why not biohack your thing instead of, if you have 2 hours, go to a gym. If you don't have 2 hours, go to upgrade labs.
We put one in Bellevue for you, right?
I know that.
Yeah.
I know that.
Naveen he's been for years telling me to do it, so I finally did. All right,
So
Naveen.
that's number 3. Number 4 is sleep. And
Yes.
this is really important. And again, this is another myth. Everyone needs 8 to 10 hours of sleep. What you really need is a good quality of sleep. Like many things in life, the quality matters. It's not the quantity, but the quality. So make sure you're getting good amount of REM sleep, which is 1.5 hour to 2 hours of REM sleep, and you're getting at least hour and 15 minutes to hour and 45 minutes of deep sleep. Right? Those 2 things are the most important thing. And you need to measure that. You can't improve something unless you're measuring it. So I use Oura Ring. I have 8 sleep mattress. I absolutely love that 8 sleep mattress. It changes the temperature as I go into the REM sleep and deep sleep. Absolutely love that. Obviously, I have my Apple Watch, and obviously I have the Withings pad underneath it, all that good stuff, just to make sure I'm getting a good night's sleep.
You're starting to sound an awful lot like a biohacker. It's no wonder that your calendar age is 65, but your body identifies as being 33 on its lab tests. So it's working for you. I mean, I've watched you get younger since we've been friends.
No, thank you, Dave. And I think, again, in the sleep, there are many things I just want everyone to know. It is personal to you. You need to understand when you're measuring your sleep, what is causing your disturbance in your sleep. So for me, one of the things I have learned, and I think it applies to most people, is to eat at least 3 hours. Don't eat for 3 hours before going to sleep. So if I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock, I don't eat after 6 o'clock. Right? If I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock, don't eat after 7. And you have to be able to at least give your digestive system a chance to digest the food before you lie down and go to sleep. For me, if I drink any alcohol in the evening, my deep sleep is toasted.
I think that happens for everyone. I've never met someone whose sleep is improved by drinking.
My point is, for me, it is just an absolute. So I know even if I drink half a glass of wine, I am done for that night. I know I'm going to get a poor sleep. Other thing that is also I found is that drinking, eating late, and also some of the, at least for me, is some of the routine of the things you do. Always try to sleep at the same time. And that really, really helps. And again, people may disagree, but I really think waking up in the morning when the sun is coming up is really good research that shows the early sunshine that you get, the rays at that angle, completely resets your circadian rhythm. And it's really good for you to be able to wake up in the morning. And if you can get out and do yoga, you can do whatever, sun worship or anything, just to be outside soaking the early sunrise. It's really, really good. The last thing, Dave, before I finish on that, so we talked about nutrition, we talked about stress reduction, we talked about exercise, we talked about sleep. The last thing is purpose and community. People who live a life of purpose tend to live 10 to 15 years longer than the people who have no purpose. So find something that you're willing to die for and then live for it, right? Find something that is your North Star that's so meaningful to you that you're going to spend the rest of your life pursuing that goal. Find your community that uplifts you. Get rid of everyone who is actually pulling you down. So you really want to create a community of people who are constantly uplifting you. They're not energy takers, but they're energy givers.
Yeah.
And that's really all you need to live longer life, healthier and longer life.
You're 100% right. And there's something else that I mentioned in one of my books that people don't think about. We have a circadian biology, but your gut bacteria also has a circadian biology.
Absolutely.
So if you're staying up late at night, your gut bacteria make more lipopolysaccharide inflammatory molecules because their sleep was disrupted. And for me to fix my circadian biology using the True Dark glasses and food timing mostly. And by the way, guys, if that's interest, it's free. Sleepwithdave.com, my favorite URL ever. That's like everything I know about sleep. But when you do that, your gut bacteria become better behaved when you control your sleep timing and quality. And it's totally counterintuitive, but those little bacteria are listening too. And it's the most fascinating thing to be able to just hack all that and say, I feel good all the time. Well, Naveen, we're up on the end of the show. There's a couple things. Guys, go to Viome.com/Dave, and Naveen is offering you a substantial discount on Viome because look, if you're listening to the show maybe for 10 years, and I'd like you to have the data and just know what's going to work for you and to save some money. So Viome.com/Dave. And if you think Naveen is as good of an entrepreneur as I do, and you want to work with us, go to theapollogroup.info. This is our mastermind for very high-level entrepreneurs wanting to build giant companies that change the world. So if you're in that mindset, check it out. Naveen, anything else?
Yes, I want to just add and saying, Dave, you have been such an inspiration to me and such an inspiration to Viome. And I want to just thank you for all the great work you do. And I've said it on record, off record, there will be no Viome, but for all the guidance, mentorship, and your hard work, and just inspiration that what you stand for. So everyone who's listening to it know that if you get a chance to work with Dave, find a way to work with him. It is just he's a good human being and just a great friend. And having known you for almost 2 decades now, Dave, I just enjoy our friendship.
Likewise, my friend. And thanks for coming back on the show and just for relentlessly educating. I don't know. I appreciate on many, many different levels. So thank you. And if you're listening to the show and saying, I've already heard Naveen on the show, he always says different stuff each time. And sometimes he says the same stuff, just like I do. But we're circling in on truths that no one knew until AI, until you got a million data sets. And the seeking of as close as we can get to reality in our understanding it's a part of biohacking, but it's also just a sacred part of being human.
The latest data that I was just seeing on men and women and how they age, and I thought that was really fascinating data we saw, that as women age, their heart actually health does not decline as fast as men does. And I think, as you know, that's the reason, one of the reasons women tend to live longer and have less heart disease. And now we can see that in the data, that actually their heart health does not decline as fast as men. However, it's really interesting. Women decline, their oral health declines faster than men, both in terms of dental and gum for women, which could be something to do with hormone, is that they are actually declining much faster than men do. And digestive efficiency, men tend to have a better digestive efficiency as they age compared to women, which is really, I just thought that the data was just fascinating to see.
It really is fascinating. All right. I'm going to suggest a couple things. We'll probably have another conversation in about 6 months on the show. And I'm going to propose some topics so that you can take them back to your massive team of researchers at Viome.
Okay.
Can we talk about EMFs and gut bacteria?
Okay, we'll do that. So next conversation.
Yeah, light and EMFs and things like fluoride and other toxins that I think RFK Jr. is likely to get out of the environment. But let's talk about artificial additives, EMFs, fluoride, and other stuff that...
And glyphosates and pesticides and insecticides.
Let's go deep on those. Would you be up for that?
Absolutely, 100%. And by the way, and let's also talk about the mold in the household.
Oh, and mold, of course. All right, it's a deal. I will see you again, and I'll see you at the Biohacking Conference long before that. Guys, biohackingconference.com. And one more time, go to Viome.com/Dave. Very substantial discount. And you might as well figure out what's going on in there. See you all soon.
See you next time on the Human Upgrade Podcast.